Our next reader tonight is Sandra Yannone. Her poems and book reviews have appeared in numerous print and online journals, including Plowshares, Poetry Ireland Review, Prairie Schooner, Beltway Poetry Quarterly, Sweet, Swim Every Day, a Miami journal, Live Encounters, Impossible Archetype, and Lambda Literary Review. Her poem Requiem for Orlando appeared in Pulsamos, LGBTQ Poets Respond to the Pulse nightclub shooting, a special online edition of Glass, a journal of poetry, in August 2016. Salmon Poetry published her debut collection, Boats for Women, in 2019, and will publish The Glass Studio in 2022, and it can't come soon enough. She's host of the Collectibles Reading Series for Headmistress Press, and she also currently hosts Cultivating Voices Live Poetry on Facebook via Zoom on Sundays. And last Sunday was the first time I attended Cultivating Voices Live, and it was fabulous. I got to watch on Facebook, and it was really fun. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over the floor to Sandra Yannone. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Judy, and of course, Linda. What a range of work, following a tremendous body of work that you have accomplished. And I just loved thinking about your reading as a theory of everything. I mean, just terrific, all the places we got to travel. What an absolute treat to read and try to follow you. And of course, what I really love about these Zoom readings is I get to read in places that I might not be able to travel to read in person. So of course, tonight we're joining you from, as Elizabeth Bishop says, Florida, the state with the prettiest name. And what better reading series than this in my mouth? SoFloPoJo. I love I just like walked around all day today just saying SoFloPoJo, like, because it just makes me tremendously happy. So again, thanks to Judy, and of course being here with Linda, and of course being here with all of you on this summer evening in Florida, and late afternoon here in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm joining you from. And I thought what I'd do is read a series of poems from Boats for Women, and then some newer work that will appear in the Glass Studio, which I now think sadly is getting pushed to 2023, but that's okay. Can always use some time to revise a little more. But anyway, all of these poems to me have a connection to summer, and I've never really put them together this way. But I thought, as one of my favorite folk singers who just passed away, Nancy Griffith, always had an album called One Fine Summer Evening. I thought, what better thing to do on one fine summer evening than to read some poems about summer, or about the different aspects of summer. Well, Boats for Women, my debut collection from Salmon Poetry in Ireland, is really about four things: this constellation of silence, disaster, desire, and hope. And the book itself has a real string to the indifference of history, as Linda mentioned in one of her poems. And one of the central features, for those of you that know the book, is the Titanic Disaster of 1912. So this poem is in that first section of the book, and is one of the Titanic poems, but nevertheless, you'll see how it takes place in summer, even though the date of the title is in April. This is Providence, April 14th, 1998. When I call my parents to wish their marriage continued success, hear the Connecticut shore breaking in the background, I am thinking also of the ship, hoping that maybe on this April 14th, the Titanic doesn't hit the iceberg, that Captain Smith for once heeds the warnings of ice and doesn't give in to speed, that the lookouts have binoculars, that the Californian doesn't put its radio to sleep 10 minutes before the first distress call. But my mother isn't thinking about her anniversary or the iceberg when I call. She is thinking about Providence when she says she has something she wants to ask me, thinking about Providence before and after I hang up the Providence of last summer's love now ringing in my ears, and all that week before spent convincing my mother that she was just a friend. But I was nervous at dinner, couldn't eat. On the drive to Providence, I grew tired and had to stop at the scenic overlook in Mystic, where in the dark I could just make out the shadows of the historic ships pressed against the night. In Providence, her plane was the last to land and late, pulling into its gate like the Carpathia arrived in New York alone and anticipated. I sat in the airport with my head in my hands, afraid of whomever might not deplane. But when I looked up, she stood before me with her luggage in hand, and in the middle of the summer terminal, we held each other as survivors of what we did not yet know. Strange, strange summer poem about that summer of still holding back and yet coming out. And I remember late that night after driving back from that airport, being on the beach with that woman. So it really evokes the idea of summertime to me in New England. Well, here's a poem that takes us again. I love to write poems that are steeped in other places, other rooms, in the voices of other people sometimes. And the second section of the book, Boats for Women, are a series of poems, all in the voice of Bess Houdini, the partner in life and in performance of the famed magician Harry Houdini. And I wrote this poem one summer, laying in a yard in Agunquit, Maine. And it was the first time I heard her voice come into my head. So this is Bess Houdini, Remembers Night Before the Modern World. This is where we should have made love. My body flat against the back lawn of this summer house once visited, the grass green and cut like the nape of your neck after the barber's trim. I don't move except my eyes, which roam through neighborhoods of stars. Framed by pine trees, I can almost reach their needles glazing the night, but the porch light is just slight enough to fix me here. The whir of the washing machine escapes the screen doors, and a telephone line strung taut like those velvet ropes in wax museums keeps you from this world. My body now, with the urge to make wingspans, a flash of divinity children carve in snow. It's what we attribute to the split moment of a star we know to be dying or worse, and don't mourn, but gasp for the way it leaves us sexless. We should have died here. Well, moving along to the fourth section of Boats for Women. I'm gonna skip one of the sections and do a little more, a couple more of these poems that kind of took place in summer. And this one happens to take place over, will feature a lunch that took place in summer. This is called Thin Objects. The order is not important. In retrospect, you can admit that the women who induced your dizziness, your shortness of breath, are now small trinkets you no longer deny you collect. They dangle from your wrist, dancing without partners. Sometimes one smacks hard between your skin and another solid object, a countertop, the car door, the bedpost. In the mornings, pinch tiny bruises, flower, smart to the touch, but you never determine which one struck the tinny blow. The woman who lurks all night around the details of the first woman who asked to kiss you, who whispered into the first minutes of the new day, we can't ever talk about this again. The woman who wouldn't talk for months until the Friday afternoon you arranged to eat fish for a non-coastal lunch. And not even the woman before your body knew there could be women, who went to Italy, returned with a charm of the Pope, which at first glance you mistook for an Eisenhower dime blessed in a brown velvet box. She offered the alloy, then withdrew herself. They are all ornament now, shiny and smooth, like coins comforting your pockets, resting against places where you can feel your bones refuse. Well, I have had the great fortune to spend time in Ireland because my publisher is in Ireland, but before that I was really drawn to Ireland because of Titanic. It's where the ship was built, as well as her last port of call. And I spent one summer in 2016 that turned out to be a very auspicious summer for a number of reasons. But one of them is I met many poets that would lead me to salmon poetry. This is a poem that kind of takes place with some of my longing of that summer and how the summer began and unfolded. It's called 37 Days of Homework. She says patience over a surprise transatlantic call on day 18. And I hear September or longer. She says, I'm ready to come home. And I ask, which one? The one she leaves me stupefied in for 37 days while she searches other countries for saints and frescoes and dying fathers, or the one I dream of remaking upon her return. I say, I am here to myself, sitting on the front porch under the tepid stars, sipping lemon tea laced with artesian honey. I say this to myself on day 30, as I am more than a little afraid to tell her that nowhere in this world where I've just traveled, Limerick, Kinsale, Cove, or Prague, feels like home without her. And this house I return to in America alone bears all the proof. The windows need cleaning. The empty chair next to me sighs under the weeping willow. The temple bells do not clink their unusual glassy tunes. They say, only when she returns will we let in zealous air songs. The grass will weep with gratitude for the feel of her feet. Every garden plant will bend to reach her son. The cat's fur stripes will stretch out in approval. And finally, next to her, on day 38, I will long to say, I feel at home. Thank you. Well, that same summer in 2016, also struck a blow to the state of Florida and also all across the world, connected to LGBTQ rights, when the shooting took place in Orlando, Florida, in the Pulse nightclub. And because I'm reading tonight virtually to folks in Florida and beyond, but because of the connection to Florida, I thought it was really important to bring this Sistina to this reading and take us back to that summer 5 years ago now. I like to warn folks that this does take us into the nightclub, and there are images of violence. So this is a Sistina Requiem for Orlando. I am struggling now to comprehend my pulse, how I still have one after all the opportunities I've had to die by my own hands, with too many drinks downed in bars, then driving while I waited to become my uncloseted self. And now I have nothing to do but pulse with crackling rage while I raise an empty glass, mourning the fact that you, Orlando, lost so many hearts, lips, and hands, all wanting to give back something to the other hearts that beat like hell on that dance floor before the clock struck 1. You, alive. You raising your drinks to the glassy air. You raising your brown Orlando hands to the heavens in the heat of your last night at Pulse. And of course, you don't know this. Don't know that death is waiting around the corner like a drunk in a car as you wait for last call. Your early morning heart drums faster to keep perfect time with its perfect pulse as it moves closer to each body on the dance floor, to the one you will leave this world with tonight, with your hands locked tight, pressing each other's calloused palms, your glassy eyes looking forward to the next time you raise them like a glass. Clutch them in the grace of everything that the body waits to release when it releases itself from the tenuous grip of hands in the act. And doesn't your Orlando always resemble the heart, restless, resilient, eager to demonstrate how it is one with the divine, how it yearns to live from within its own pulse? And now I am pondering the woman who sat next to me, pulsing on my porch steps before we kissed, then shuffled our hearts back into the deck to hide in the shadows of the one true thing that I know I have been waiting to discover with another. And now all the broken drinking glasses resemble diamonds on the glass floor, and a pair of smeared sunglasses rests on the floor of the massacre's aftermath inside and outside of Pulse. Orlando, the world will wake up Sunday morning with news of your hearts murdered. And in the 5th stanza, I've dropped a line in shock. My hands go cold from grief. I don't know if I can wait for the one who could be the one, while everyone in Orlando is one dance step away from their hearts shattering like blown glass floats that hands once held precious, waiting for love to pulse. Yes, pulse. And still, I have one. Thank you. I don't read that poem often, but I choose pretty carefully. And as I said, being here virtually connected with some folks who are joining us from Florida with a journal that originates in Florida, it felt really important for me. So thank you so much for listening. Well, I'm going to read, I think I'm going to try to read two or three more. And we'll end on a little historical note, and we'll end on something delicious and happier in summer. Well, I'm going to take you back now. As I said, I really love the indifference of history. And I love that phrase, Linda, the indifference of history. I love writing about historical subjects. And I'm kind of, I have a little penchant for some murderers. This one happens to be about a murder that took place in 1892 in Fall River, Massachusetts. And some of you may remember the alleged murderer from a jump rope song that was actually, I learned in researching for this poem, the song emerged actually from the children in the neighborhood in Fall River, Massachusetts, after Lizzie Borden was brought into police custody. So Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41, was actually said by the children in that neighborhood after the murders. So it's not something that was created after. What a fascinating thing to think of the kids there in 1892 coming up with that rhyme that would endure all this time. Well, this is what I call a fractured sonnet that seems appropriate given all the hatchets that are part of this poem, which in fact is called All the Hatchets. Borden residence, Fall River, Massachusetts, August 1892. The police, after I summoned for help, appeared to wait with me for a break in the case. In my parlor, they apologetically hounded me with insinuations as questions before the wounds on my father's face had time to cake dry. We all made mistakes that blistering August day. I remained a woman alone because no one saw me awake with a man. They believed in all the hatchets they'd found dismembered in my basement, evidence resounding that I took the blade to flesh multiple times downstairs and up. I could not debate their suppositions any more than my deflated muscles could release their powers to a blunt instrument. I ask what you might have accomplished in those implausible hours with all the words in your mouth, a confession of gravel you wished to spit to the planked parlor floor, your creased forehead unveiling its worry in the mirror's glass. What would you do to ignite your innocence, if from the couch in the other room, your father's one good dead eye continued its duress. Well, I like to remind folks that, in fact, Lizzie Borden was found innocent of that crime. There's some incredible biographies about the murder. And if you're interested in learning more, look and read about the history. Well, I'm going to end, as I said, with a poem that I think is hopefully a little more upbeat after all this murder, mayhem, and shipwreck that I've shared with you this evening. Thank you so much. I actually live right down the street from a blueberry farm, and I spend many an early morning or early evening picking blueberries. It's one of my favorite things to do in summer. So I leave you with a very good taste of blueberries to all of you this evening. And this is my last poem called The Taste of Blueberries, with thanks to Sweet Lit for publishing it a couple of years ago. The Taste of Blueberries. Oh yes, it could have been another season of waking to the blueberries that swelled, ripened during the blue night, whole and full, when we did or didn't sleep, and when we could wake to rub our blurred eyes open and wash our hands clean of night and ripe for morning, and the ink of the blueberries that could write something over and over again from the tips of our fingers if we chose to rise and walk to the fields. And even if we never spoke there while picking, and even if our fingers bleeding blue never touched, we would know why we were here picking blueberries together in early morning underneath the bird songs and roosters' calls. And even if our lips never touched the taste of blueberries, they would be here too, with all of this wanting, all the same. And the longer we stayed silent and the heavier our buckets became full, we would know we were here for this. But this was not that summer of blueberries, and neither was the last or the one before that. And I'm here choosing to pick blueberries by myself because the truth of what I'll never have this season or any other, unless you arrive begging for blueberry stained kisses, wakes me to these berries, makes up for every year we'll never have. And knowing that our lives were always meant for this fruit still blooms delicious inside my buried mouth.